How's it going, guys? My name is Miles and this is the Make with Miles channel. Today I'm going to be taking you to the Bay Area Maker Faire, where I'm going to ask 3 questions to as many makers as possible. The 3 questions are: what's your favorite tool, what's the first thing that you made, and what's one piece of advice you have for young makers. Let's go.
My favorite tool is, this is cheesy, but a pencil and paper, because you can solve probably 90% of the problems you're going to run into on a piece of paper before you ever do any work. The first thing I can remember making was a Star Wars ship out of Legos, because I didn't have all the different Star Wars ships that I wanted, so I just used Legos and made it, and that's the first thing I can think of. Alright, so for young makers, I think the best way to learn how to do different things and use different tools is to pick a project that you really like, something that you don't have access to, that you really want, and you will be motivated to learn everything you need to learn to get that thing done because you care about it.
Ooh. So my favorite tool is my hot glue gun, and I use it for everything. I love it because it's intuitive, it's easy to use, and it's actually not permanent. It can hold really well, but a little dab of rubbing alcohol will pop it right off. So if I make a mistake, I can always go back. The first thing I remember making is, I think I must have been in like 3rd or 4th grade, and it was Father's Day, and we made Father's Day presents in school, and the project was to make a necktie for your dad, and we made them out of clay. One piece of advice I would give to makers who want to make things is just start. The hardest thing for me is starting a project, because I start to think of questions like, how am I going to make this, and what am I going to make it out of, and what is it going to be, and is this a good idea? Am I going to fail at this? And really those questions are unimportant. If you just start, you will figure all of those things out on the way there.
My favorite tool and why? Man, that's a really tough one, but for like a maker space or a school space, I say get a laser cutter, because they are so fast and you can get so many students through making a project like that, and they're easy to understand. You know, I'm sure that as a kid I played with Play-Doh and stuff like that, but the first time I really felt that kind of creative spark and making something of my own was, I took an old music box apart and repainted all of the surfaces with my own designs, and kind of changed how the little dancing clown on it, and I kind of changed the mechanics of that and put it all back together. And that's the first time I really felt like I was like making my own thing more than just playing with toys. A piece of advice for young makers or people who want to make stuff would be, you know, it can be tempting to feel like you need a better tool or a better setup to start making what you want, but the most important part is to just start creating things, and to never be discouraged by seeing people that are better than you, because there's always someone better. But you just have to be making stuff. Even if you don't feel like it's very good, you just have to keep making stuff.
Oh, but that depends on the application. I mean, since I do both woodworking and metalworking, it's really hard, but like a tool that's made of hardened Swedish steel, that would be, yeah, like a chisel or a wrench or something. That's impossible. I remember the first thing I remember destroying, but not making. I don't know. I can't tell. It's impossible. No, sorry. Fail. Fail as much as possible. Just get really, really good at failing. Because then you can actually move on and make really good stuff. But you're gonna fail so much. That's just gonna be it. Yeah.
Oh, there's this little tool that came with my 3D printer that is like, I think it's like somewhere between like a plier and a cutter thing, and that's my favorite tool. I use it for everything, cutting epoxy, cutting glue, like glue gun glue. I cut everything with it. It's my favorite tool. I guess like, well, there was this project I made in middle school that was a boat that someone could actually be on with milk cartons. And that's what we made. Like my friends and I made that for school, and we actually competed across a pool with it, and it was pretty good. Yeah. My advice is a few things. Just be patient. Be sure that you're gonna make a lot of mistakes and you're gonna break a lot of things before you make something, and that's part of building. And don't be discouraged if you make a mistake. That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite tool? I really like Clecos. Clecos are their hole clamps. 2 pieces of aluminum, say you want to rivet them together, but you don't want to drill, rivet, drill, rivet, drill, rivet. You get these hole clamps, and there's a special pliers. It's like a little cylinder that sticks down in there, and you let go, and it fastens them together. It's like a temporary rivet. First thing I remember making, and I found it the other day at my parents' house. It's a little Frankenstein's monster out of wood that I colored in with crayons. Find yourself a project, something you want to make. If you want to make some blinky LEDs, make a control panel or something for like a spaceship, you know. Then just figure out how to do the specific parts that you want to make, and you are going to learn the skills along the way. Everything I've learned that way.
My favorite tool is probably the bandsaw because you can do straight cuts and curve cuts. So if I had to get rid of all the other tools, I'd probably stick with the bandsaw. The first thing I remember making was it's a shelf display. It's a decorative piece that sits on a shelf, and it's a cat, and the paw overhangs and it has a little mouse hanging. I made that back in high school, and I recently remade that for my mom as a Mother's Day gift. So my latest project is also my first project. Everybody's posting their stuff up online now. People like sharing what they do, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or YouTube. And my bit of advice is, when you do that, don't listen to all the people who tell you you should have done it this way or you shouldn't have done it this way. Do it the way you want to do it, and keep posting and sharing that stuff. And just make the stuff that you want to make, and don't be influenced by everybody else.
My favorite 3D, or my favorite tool, if I had to choose one, would be a 3D printer, because you can make anything with it. That's a cheating answer.
My answer is like something super basic, like a drill, just because you use it for so many things.
Yeah.
So many things.
Super versatile.
Yeah. I used to make mazes out of cardboard for my hamsters. Multi-tiered mazes. That was the first thing.
Legos.
I think don't be afraid of messing up.
Failure is just part of the process.
Failure is part of it. It's going to happen, and it happens to everybody, and it's totally okay.
Yeah, and just like keep on experimenting, and you'll find what brings you the most joy through that experimentation, through that failure, and just keep on going at it.
I love the bandsaw because it's just, there's so many options with a bandsaw. Like you can make so many things with it, and as a sculptor, it was, when I got a bandsaw, it just changed how many different things that I could make. You can make a whole bunch of different styles of cuts, rib cuts and cross cuts, and then like scrolling cuts. So I like going to the bandsaw as much as possible. Did a lot of like models with my dad. So like plastic car models, we made tons of them. We also did Pinewood Derby cars. It might have been the Pinewood Derby cars. We did like the little racing Pinewood Derby cars, and I wanted to make them like so elaborate, and he was like, all right, we're gonna do it. Made one into like a chili pepper or something like that. I don't know why I was into making it into a chili pepper, but yeah.
I would say don't be discouraged by not understanding a process. I think that gets to a lot of people where you're like, I don't know how this works, so I'm not going to do it. I think like just I learn best from like just getting into a project, and if you just like, I don't know, if you keep telling yourself that you can't do it because you don't know how, you just like, you're never going to start or never going to try. So yeah.
Favorite tool, it always changes. Angle grinder right now. It's a $40 tool that can cut, sand. You could probably drill with it, but I wouldn't recommend it. But you can power carve wood, you can cut steel, you can cut masonry stuff. And that would be my one desert island stranded tool. Probably something food related, and I'd lump that in with making. Probably bread or rice or something very basic like that. But in terms of like hard goods, probably I think wooden swords or some sort of spear. Be prolific rather than be excellent. And then also think about what kind of, think about what your personality is like. Are you a meticulous person that wants to go deeper and become a craftsman? Or are you a generalist that's going to end up being more of an inventor by sort of mixing together different genres of stuff? There's no right way to make things, there's only the way that's taking the most advantage of what you already have.
Favorite tool? The last couple of years it's been the CNC tables. I just think of more and more ways to use them, and with the metal and the wood, there's just tons of things you can do with them, so that's what I'm using the most, I think. And also I think a speed square. I used to use a speed square all the time. I have that on my tool belt at all times. Oh man, I had all kinds of Legos and Connects when I was young. And I'd just spend hours up in my room alone working on those, and I was just like in my own world. I remember when I'd have trouble finding a piece, I'd go get my mom and she'd come up and look like in the whole pile of Legos, help me find the piece, and I'd keep building. So that was probably some of the first things that I built. I think my advice would be to figure out what you love doing, not because it's gonna make you money or it's maybe a career. Just figure out what you love doing and do it for that reason, and let everything else like happen along the way.
My favorite tool? Dremel tool. The first thing I can remember making, I made a chair, like when I was maybe 9. I made a chair out of a satellite dish? No, what's it called? A satellite dish, yeah. And I made like a base out of bricks. I put up a bunch of bricks, and then I like put the satellite dish on it and like threw pillows on it, and it was awful because you just slid out of it all the time, but it looked cool and I was really proud of it. I think just getting started is the hardest part. Like I feel like a lot of people really want to make things, but they don't know how to get started, or like you get so ambitious or think that the thing you have to make has to be really good to justify spending time on it. And it's really like you could just set out to make something that's terrible, and that's fine. Like as long as you get some momentum going, then the process just swoops you up. So just make anything, really. It doesn't have to be anything. Make anything, it doesn't have to be anything. Great advice. Thank you. Signing off, Smoker.
My favorite tool is actually my table saw that I rebuilt. It took me about 10 minutes to rebuild it. Rebuilt it from scratch. It's a 1950s Delta Unisaw. In order of importance, I've got my wife, my first child, my table saw, and my second child. But that's not my favorite tool to use, which is my lathe, which is a really crappy Chinese-made lathe that I can just do whatever I want to with. So they're my favorite tools for totally different reasons. First thing that I remember making, I made a set of bookends for my mom. There's a group in California called 4-H. It's like Boy Scouts for farmers. and we had a woodworking club, and so I made a set of really nice wood bookends for my mom. I think that the answer that most people give is that they need to just do it, and I think that I would like to truncate that you should also enjoy it. You know, it's something that you should be having fun with, and if you're so worried about getting things right and doing things perfectly, then you're going to ruin the experience and the joy of actually making.
All right, my favorite tool, my two hands. My second favorite tool is probably a rotary tool, or at least if you're getting started with making, a rotary tool is a fantastic first investment. You can get a ton of different bits for it. You can cut, you can sand with it, you can burnish. There's so many different things you do with a rotary tool. But one of the first prop projects I made, I'm a prop maker. I think I was like 15 or 16, I made a lightsaber handle, and I glued all of the washers together with super glue. All of the wood, the tubing and everything, I used every single washer my dad had. He was less excited about it than I was, but I had a lightsaber when I was 15, and that was pretty fantastic. If you're just getting into making, you're looking for some advice on getting started, then I recommend picking a thing that you want to make that you're completely obsessed with. For me, it was video games. Team Fortress, Skyrim especially. These are video games that I put hundreds of hours into. I knew every nook and cranny of the game. I was invested and obsessed with these video games so much that I couldn't not make something from them. I had to pull those things out of the game into the real world.
Cucumbers. I hate cucumbers. I don't even like being near cucumbers. They make me nervous.
My favorite tool, I mean, it's pretty common knowledge, is the bandsaw. I like the bandsaw. Lately, my new favorite tool is the CNC machine. I love my big ShopBot Alpha because it's just so versatile. You could pretty much do anything on it. And when people ask me, I say, you want to start a business, just get a CNC machine. But for old-time classic love, the bandsaw. I made a little seahorse that I still have. I just saw it the other day. I made it when I was 9 years old in 1976. I made it with my dad, and he'd let me do most of the work, but it was the first thing where I looked at it the next day and I thought to myself, wow, I made that. I think the best advice I like to give is just experiment. Don't go into anything with expectations of perfection, because then you let yourself down. I think it's really important to approach every discipline with a little sense of experimentation, and know that keep in mind where you see somebody who's a musician or piano player or violin player, they don't just sit at the piano and just knock out Rachmaninoff. It takes time to get to a point where you're extremely proud of what you're doing. So experiment and learn as you go.
Obviously CNC, because come on, CNC Master Race. Sorry, was that too bold? But CNC, greatest thing ever. The first real thing I made was like an arc reactor back in grad school. I just like by hand sanded like acrylic and dremeled it out. Stuck some LEDs on it, but I don't know. Since then things have gotten much better, but that was like the first real project I documented. I would tell makers that find something you're passionate about, because that interest will drive you. And when you hit a dead end, or you're like, I sort of cobbled some stuff together, that's good enough, your passion will drive you to just make it perfect or just take it to the next level. And that's like, it'll be just more gratifying to begin with, but it's also going to push you to become a better maker.
What is the one tool I use more that I never thought I would? Wow, that's a really good question. I mean, I want to say a calculator. Frankly, I'm surprised by how much I have fallen in love with math as an adult, given my high school career in math. I would say, if you don't know about Forstner bits, I mean, I think this crowd probably does, but there's this whole class of tools that you won't learn about by going to Ace Hardware. Right? They'll tell you about hammers and Allen wrenches and crescent wrenches and socket sets, but Forstner bits are one of these tools that someone has to kind of introduce you to how wonderful it is, to understand that for 35 bucks you can drill any hole up to 2 inches perfectly straight sides. Before I had a milling machine, I did milling operations with Forstner bits because you can. Forstner bits are amazing, and I literally use them every single day. I'm 25-year-old me is surprised about that.
If you guys haven't heard by now, Maker Faire won't be happening next year. For me, Maker Faire was about meeting new people and being part of the community. Even though this is sad news, I have no doubt that there will be other Maker events in the future because of how strong-knit this community is. I want to say a huge thanks to everybody who answered my questions for this video. If you're curious to see what these cool people are up to, everybody's links are in the description below. If you liked this video, hit the subscribe button to see more of what I'm up to. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.